I think the simplest definition I can give you is that a story in a presentation or in a business context is a real life example that makes a point. That's essentially what a story is in the types of contexts that I help people with.
Okay, so welcome to the Early Birds Club, and we are very glad that you just made up to come here and enlighten us with the various insights. We have gone through your profile and quite a fine time, like I was following you regarding your works, your storytelling part, your execution towards the entrepreneurship and client customer, how the storytelling can be branded itself. So it's a vast thing. I think 1 hour or like 45 minutes of interview can't make those things in a precise way. But of course, I will try to give India and globally some sort of knowledge and some sort of enlightenment through you, how storytelling and entrepreneurship works together. I think we can start along. And as far as I can say for Early Birds Club is an entity and a venture in India. And of course, it's settled in globally in online sectors. We do entrepreneurship trainings, incubation, acceleration, funding. We have many mentors like you, the like-minded people like you in our ecosystem who are transitioning and helping entrepreneurs and startups for transformation and various capabilities and skills that need to be put forward for filling the gap of their skills that required for market. So we are welcoming you, Francisco, in our ecosystem as a mentor and coach. And for starting, some information about you to our viewers, that Francisco Mahfuz has always loved speaking. Even like before speaking, he had anything useful to say. He'd been telling his stories in front of the audience for close to the decade and even become a national champion of public speaking. Today, Francisco is a keynote speaker, storytelling coach, and offers communication training to individuals and international organizations. He is the author of Bear, a Guide to Brutally Honest Speaking, Public Speaking, and the host of the Storypowers Podcast that the Early Birds Club always follows that. So welcome to the Early Birds Club, Francisco.
Good to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me.
So for beginning the session, we want to know about you, your journey, how you here, like what's the journey that you put to the destination over here?
So do you know that horrible dream where you are standing in front of the classroom and everybody's waiting for you to speak and you're terrified? So I lived that when I was I think 12 years old. So I was in classes of 7th grade, and my teacher said, "Francisco, can you please come up here and tell a story to the whole class?" And I looked around, and some of the other students looked horrified, and the other half looked like they were pretty happy to see me crash and burn. But as I made my way to the front of the class, I realized that I was terrified, but I was also a little excited. And that's because I was never really a popular kid. So my mom made a big sacrifice to send me to this fancy private school. But the problem was that if you go to a place where everyone has more money than you, then you just can't afford the same things they can. So I could never go on the school trips. I didn't dress the same as they did. Whenever I went to someone's house, I was a bit embarrassed to have them back at my house. So that made me different. And when you are that old in school, or that young, I should say, in school, being different is not particularly a good thing. But as I was walking to the front of the class, I thought, what if they like my story? Maybe this is my chance. And so I went up there and I told the story, and they loved it, and they laughed and they cheered and they asked me to tell more stories. And as I was up there in front of the class, I felt like the most popular kid in that school. But then, the bell rang, and we all left the classroom, and I left the stories behind. And to be honest, I completely forgot about that moment and about how powerful a story could be for a very long time. And as I got older, I had to pick some sort of career, and because I was always concerned about money, I didn't feel like I felt back in school. I ended up doing a job that I thought would be, make it easier to earn money, to support a family, and all of those things that we tend to do when we're grown-ups. And I did that for a long time. And every time the alarm clock rang, I would wake up and I would be a bit, I would feel tired, I would feel frustrated, I would feel like there's got to be more to life than this. And I kept pushing it off because I thought, I have a decent job, I have a family to support, I shouldn't take some crazy risk with what I'm doing. And then when I found out I was going to have a second kid, I decided, okay, well, listen, this is it. I'm a grown-up now. If I don't, this is the rest of my life. If I don't do something about it now, I'm never going to do it. And this is when I decided to start getting into speaking and teaching people how to tell their own stories. And that was a little before COVID hit. So perhaps not the best timing for anything like that, but that's how I got into what I'm doing now.
So it's a quite nice story. And even when I was following you, and I've seen your podcast also and some speeches, so you always tell that, okay, I don't want a kid, but right now I have two kids. I remember that line that you spoken over to your podcast and some in front of the audience. Yes, of course. And basically, this is life. Actually, we have to upgrade, update, and accept it, like how everything is there with us. And we have to grow up the things, but it's a good thing that you found your passion, you found what exact forte you have, and have something to give to the society back. So that's nice. So our first question for you is, enlighten us with your mentorship journey so far, and what's inspired you to choose this as a profession?
It's a combination of two things, really. A lot of the jobs I've done have involved some type of mentorship. So I used to be an English teacher many years ago. And then pretty much every job I've ever done in sales, which is most of what I've been doing for many years, I was always usually the person who trained. I was always the person who had to coach other people. And I always enjoyed that part of the job. So it was really a combination of two things. When I started getting into what I'm doing now, I wanted to speak. That's still the thing I probably feel most passionate about, is being on a stage and speaking. But it's also true that now, because of COVID, that has changed. It's not the same. It will come back eventually, but it's not, you don't get the same feeling of satisfaction by doing it online as you would if you were in front of people. Whereas on the other hand, coaching or mentoring, or however we want to call that is as rewarding to do online as it would be in person. Perhaps it's even easier to do online than it would be in person, because we have different tools. So the decision I had to take at some point later last year was, when it looked like COVID was still going to be a factor for a long time, I said, okay, well, I can't just focus on the speaking, because that might take a long time to come back the way I would like it to come back. So I need to focus more on the coaching and training and mentoring side. And that's what I've been doing for the last few months. So that's why, if you followed me on LinkedIn for long enough, a few months ago, you'd have seen that the focus changed slightly. I'm talking less about storytelling in general and more about how individuals can use storytelling, because that's when I switched to more coaching and more helping individuals, and not necessarily just the speaking.
Exactly. This pandemic and this whole lockdown situation changed everything. for the customer behavior also, and also how we proceed for our passion. Because when we give coaching and keynote speaking in front of everyone live, so that's a different story. We can connect with them with each and every mind. We can be persuasive, and of course we always try to tell the exact point of emotion that we are gonna express. But in online situation, you are facing the same thing. Of course, the whole world is facing the same thing. So it's a new normal, I think. So the second question for you is, how do you describe the art of storytelling for an effective presentation?
I think the simplest definition I can give you is that a story in a presentation or in a business context is a real life example that makes a point. That's essentially what a story is in the types of contexts that I help people with. So if you're going to do a presentation, there's a number of things you're trying to do. One of the very first things is you want attention. So you want people to listen to you, to engage with what you're telling them. You want retention. So you want them to remember anything you're telling them. And you want inspiration. You want to change behavior. You want to motivate people to take action, to do something. And those three things are what stories can give you. But in simple terms, all you're doing is you giving a real life example, either from your life or from someone else's life, and you're using that to make a point, instead of what a lot of people do, which is just explain things. They will just give opinions, they will give facts, they'll make statements, but those aren't anywhere near as engaging as a story can be.
Same thing. We also say it's the same thing about telling the story and presenting your exact that in front of the clients or in front of the customer. We should tell everything in a story manner so that we can connect with through emotions and through the mind and through the heart. I think you said the exact words, and thank you so much for enlightening us. The third question that next come to, like, how to connect with customers and clients. If I'm speaking about the clients and customers, so how to connect with them through strategic storytelling and persuasive presentation. I think you have a forte on that, and we really need to know about that aspect.
The way you connect with people is usually by showing that you are like them, or the people you help are like them, that you share the same problems, that you understand the struggles, and that you know how to get out of them. So this is where people get very confused sometimes with this advice of, no one cares about you, no one cares about your story, you should talk about the audience. That is true, but you talk about the audience through talking about you, or through talking about your clients. So if I'm watching a presentation, if I'm reading something on social media, and whatever problem that's being described sounds like a problem I have, what I'm going to feel is, oh, that sounds just like what I'm going through now. And this person sounds just like me. This person is struggling with the same thing I'm struggling with. And that's how you connect, is when you see yourself and your struggles into what other people are going through. So this is why it's important when you're trying to connect with your ideal clients that you understand who your ideal clients are. Because if you don't understand them, it's very difficult for you to talk about the right things in the right way, so they'll see themselves in your stories, in your pitches, and whatever you're trying to communicate.
That's great. Actually, this is the most important spice and aspect, I think, required for any business and startups, and the skill required for any entrepreneur. I think in the long run, we will always try to connect with you, and you are always to be invited for enlightening us about this aspect, small aspects. Those are most important for running a business or startups. So the fourth question that is my favorite one, actually. Can you enlighten us with your best-selling book Bear a Guide to Brutally Honest Public Speaking. Why is the question mark? How you enlighten us with this exact book with the question mark? Like how to be brutally honest?
It's actually a very similar answer to the one I just gave you about how to connect with people. The whole idea of what I call brutally honest public speaking is not being brutally honest in the sense of being rude to other people, is being brutally honest about yourself and about the things you're going through. And the main lesson of that book is one that is not, original to me, which is vulnerability. It's how and when to be vulnerable when you're speaking. But it all comes down to the same thing, is you are talking about real things that you've gone through, not things you're going through now. You need to have gotten to the other side of them. Otherwise, it's difficult for an audience to learn a lesson if you haven't learned the lesson yet. But that's essentially it. You need to find the things that have bothered you in the past, find the things that have hurt you in the past, and then talk about how you've got over them. And when you do that, you are laying yourself bare to the audience. The cover of the book is a guy in a Superman style, sort of opening the shirt, but he's actually opening his chest, and you can see his heart there. So it's just showing people, this is what I've struggled with. These are the things I had to go through, and this is where I am now. And that's essentially it. That there's more to it than that. But what a lot of people struggle with when they communicate is they just want to show the best side of themselves. They don't show the struggle. They don't show when they were lost. And because of doing that, it's very difficult to connect. Because if you just always show up as the super competent person who knows what you're doing, other people that are struggling won't see themselves in you right now.
So you are telling that being brutally is not like rude, but being brutally is exactly your emotions, what the same emotions you have gone through, and to connect with the people that they're also seeing themselves in your aspect and your path, right? So I think that's a great deal, and it's a great idea to connect with each other, whether it's a customer, whether it's a client, or whether it's your product that you need to sell in front of them. I think the first rule of producing your product or selling your product is know your product, know your product's emotion, and tell the expressions that required for building that product. We will get it, and of course, I always tell, and now also I'm telling that please go through the book to everyone, to every connections, to every people who are seeing this interview with Francisco. So please go through that book for enlightening the aspects of storytelling and the key elements required for to be brutally honest with the exact situation you are selling your products, and if you are an entrepreneur. So thanks a lot, Francisco, for this. So coming to the fifth question of ours, where and from what do you seek motivation? What would you suggest people now that everyone is more anxious about giving uncertainty? Because right now in pandemic situation, everything is uncharted. The path is uncharted. Certain things are not certain enough, and everyone is just sailing on a boat, doesn't know where the destination is going. So how should people be motivated enough, and how should they treat themselves to get motivated each and every time?
I find that the most motivating thing to me is just genuinely enjoying what you're doing, and not the idea of what you're trying to achieve. Because this is a challenge and a mistake that I think a lot of people make, and is not with anything in life, right? So say you're trying to get in better physical shape, which is important. But if your only pleasure comes from imagining how great you're going to look on the beach when you've gotten, super fit, but you hate working out, then it's very difficult that you're actually going to stick with it and get any results. So, if you don't like working out the way you're working out, then find a different way of exercising that you can take pleasure from. And I think a lot of that applies to business. there are things that surely are not that pleasant to do. Like, I don't think anyone likes doing their taxes and working out the accounting of your business. But at some point you can pay someone to do those things. But you need to like the vast majority of what you're doing. So a lot of my work involves talking to people. A lot of my work involves coming up with stories that I can share on social media and engaging with people that way. Now, if I hate that, then I'm going to be miserable most of the time. And I'm just going to be thinking, oh, it's going to be great when I get a client. Fine, but the pleasure of getting a client and getting paid for that work lasts this long. And everything else you do is every other hour you're awake. So if the day-to-day of what you're doing is not pleasurable to you at all, then either change what you're doing or find ways to focus on the parts that you enjoy and hopefully you're good at, and get help with the parts that you're not so much. Because I find that if the only thing that is pushing you to do something is what you have coming up 6 months down the line or a year down the line, it's very, very difficult to stay motivated. So find pleasure in the day-to-day tasks is what I try to do.
Exactly. So you just given the example of enjoy what you do. Enjoy what you do. Enjoy each and every day, the precise moments, and enjoy your work so that you can't be tired enough if you are working a 12-hour continuous span also. I think that's a great motivational technique that we can apply to. That's great. So we are moving to the sixth question. This question is for our viewers, for the global entrepreneurs. Those are in our ecosystem. We have more than thousands of startups in our ecosystem, and more than 20 plus companies partnered with us. Many good firms. So what is the tip? What's a pro tip for the entrepreneurs now today regarding storytelling or regarding selling, regarding marketing? What is the tip that you want to give them?
I think the basic tip is to actually tell some stories. One of the biggest problems I find when I talk to people about storytelling is that they just don't do it. It's not. Sure, you can learn how to be better at it. There's plenty of things that you can teach people in how to improve their storytelling, but a lot of people are actually not that bad at it if they try. So what I tend to tell people is simply this: whatever you're trying to do, find an example that helps you tell that. So there's a line that unfortunately it's not mine, which is never tell a story without a point, and never make a point without a story. So what is it that you're trying to talk about? Okay, have you lived something similar? Has anyone lived something similar? Find an example, find a story, and share it that way, because that's almost certainly going to be more engaging than whatever you can write without a story. And if you just get into the habit of always looking for an example from your life, from someone else's life, from another business, from the movies, like whatever it is that you want to talk about, think of your favorite movie. Is there a scene in there that helps you explain anything that you're trying to get across to people? Because it's going to make your communication a lot more memorable than if it's just you trying to be smart or you trying to be funny, which most people will struggle with. So, don't invent things. Pick real examples from your life, real examples from the movies, real examples from other entrepreneurs' lives, and that will help your communication, even if you haven't learned how to do that the best way possible, but just get started.
So I think from your that saying, it's just my personal question: is it okay to lie with the story?
So the simple answer is no, but it's a little more complicated than that.
Exactly.
So there's two types of lies. There's the lie of commission, which is when you're putting something in the story that wasn't there. And there's a lie of omission, where you're just taking stuff out. Commission is not okay. Omission is fine. But what I'm trying to say here is you can't change what the story is about. You can't change what happened. you can simplify so it flows a little better. Because if I had to tell you everything that happened, no story would last an hours and hours, right? So if I have to tell you something that happened to me yesterday, there's a good chance that the story starts, at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it goes all the way to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's 3 hours. I'm not going to tell you for 3 hours. What's really important is what happened over those 30 seconds, but I have to tell you a little more so you understand. I have to tell you what happened after. So I just have to think, okay, what happened was that I went into a shop and someone tried to pick my pocket, right? Fine. I don't need to tell you about everything that happened in the shop. I don't need to tell you about any conversation I had that doesn't automatically refer to the fact that someone tried to pick my pocket. So you are taking stuff out every time you tell a story. Is just figuring out what can you take out without lying. So one simple way to do this is, if you had a friend with you and that friend saw exactly what had happened and you told the story the way you're telling now, would that friend look at you and say, that's not how it happened? Because if that's the case, you've changed the story too much. If they say, yeah, that's pretty much what happened, that's okay, right? So you can take stuff out to make the story easier to understand, but you shouldn't put stuff in. You should never change the actions of the characters. You should never make people say what they haven't said. So take stuff out, simplify, but don't. One good example is the movies. So when you might have paid attention to this before, but in a movie or a TV show, people answer the phone. They never say, hi, who is it?
Exactly.
They just start talking because it's irrelevant to do the polite stuff that everybody does when they answer the phone. It just takes too much time in the movie. No one cares about it, right? So you just take that out. And if there's 5 different characters, when all you really need is one character, you make all of them be one character, because it doesn't really, if you were the main character and there were 5, government employees that were giving you different forms to fill in, but it doesn't really matter. The whole point of the story is that how, government bureaucracy is a pain in the neck. You can make the 5 different employees be one employee. Like, that doesn't really change the truth of the story. So though that type of thing is fine to do. What you shouldn't do is have someone do something that they never did. Like, they cannot say, well, I never did that. That never happened. Then you've changed too much.
Great. So thank you so much for explaining this stuff, because I think the base of the story is important. We can change the base of the story. We can change the emotion of the story. Of course, we can put some spices on it to make it interesting, but not the whole bunch of the gist and crux of the story. So that's an enlightening tip for everyone. So if I'm speaking about for clients or for entrepreneurs, so how much failure is important to help us drive ourselves to success? Because entrepreneurship is all about like learning and successfulness and failure. So how much is important to drive ourselves to a success?
I think there's 2 levels to that. The first one is that I'm not sure failure is necessarily the word, but you need pain. Something needs to be bothering you. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be trying to start a business, become an entrepreneur, whatever we want to call that. That doesn't necessarily mean failure. It might just mean you might be actually be very successful, but you feel unfulfilled, as I did before I started this new career. But there needs to be pain somewhere. Otherwise, there's no motivation to do anything. Now, if that pain comes with failure, that's just how it happened, right? But the pain needs to be there. The other aspect of that is how much you fail on a day-to-day basis. And I think the answer is that you have to fail to a certain extent all the time, because if you're not failing, you're not trying new things. You're not trying hard enough in some cases. So take social media, for example, right? I can write text posts reasonably well. So I know how the types of views that I get when I do that. I know that I get a reasonable engagement when I do it. Now, if I can stick with that, I'll probably never, a post is never gonna fail exactly. But if I decide that I want to start putting videos out, there's a very good chance that the first videos I'm gonna make are not gonna be as successful because I don't know what I'm doing.
True.
And if I'm too concerned about failing, I'm either not gonna do it, or I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna find something that works, and I'm never gonna try something different because I'm afraid of failing. And the reality is that in social media, as in a lot of other things with business, you fail all the time. Most people don't care, don't even notice, and that's how you realize, okay, well, that doesn't work as well. Maybe I need to try something different. Maybe I need to do more of it. Maybe I need to do less of it. So I think that failure is just feedback to some extent. And if you don't have the small failures, all you usually have is the big one, right? So you keep doing the same thing over and over. You feel reasonably competent, but unless you're actually being successful with that, it's eventually not going to work. And if you haven't trained yourself to deal with the small failures, when the big one comes, you're going to go, oh, wow, that didn't work. So maybe I have to go off and do something else now. Because actually it should just be, well, this didn't work, go here. But this is not working, go here. This is not working, go there, right? So I think you need small failures all the time because they show you the way that is actually more likely to be successful.
I think that's a kind of hit and trial, we can say, that this is not successful. We learn those failures and we implemented it once again in a good way, so we can go in another path. I think that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for the wonderful answer. So can we just going for the 8th question? How many days it takes to build strong communication skill? Because we can just say that we have to build storytelling skills, and we have to be good branding. So how it's most important aspect is how to take and how many days it takes to build a strong communication skill. What activities in handy nowadays I can speak, and what activities come in handy in our daily lives to improve our the speaking skills and storytelling skills?
The answer to how long, I think it depends on what you're doing, because if you take a workshop, right? So if I run a workshop and it's 5 or 6 hours long and there's a whole bunch of practical exercises, by the end of that day, people will be better communicators and better storytellers than they were before. But if then they don't do anything after that, then that skill is going to fade. And 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line, they might not actually be better than they were before the training. If on the other hand, you just say, okay, well, I'm posting on social media every day, or I have to present for my job every day, or I write emails every day, and you actually getting feedback on the things you're doing, and you're thinking, okay, well, someone tells me, yeah, that was a great email, that email wasn't good, I didn't quite understand, and you act on that feedback, you will be getting better every day. And that's, I think, the important thing is that there is no point where you're so good that you don't have to learn anymore. And that goes for people like me who have been doing this for years, and there goes for people who have been doing it for decades. The important thing is that you're making progress. Progress is better, it's more important than perfection. I think that if you do it intentionally, if every day or every few days you're doing something that is to do with communication, and you are getting feedback, either because you have a coach or because you have a trusted friend or colleague, or because it's something like social media, where you can see the engagement, you can see the views, and you are genuinely trying to understand what worked, what didn't work, and change it, you can see improvements very fast. Mm-hmm. I think anyone that puts stuff out on social media 3 times a week and pays attention to the response they're getting and asks other people for feedback, in a month you'll be a lot better than you were when you started. In 6 months, it will be unrecognizable to you how much better you are communicating if you're being intentional.
So it's all about persistence, and
it's not just about doing a lot of practice. It's about doing the right practice and having someone help you figure out if it's the right practice. Because if you post, it doesn't work, then you try something different and it works, and you try more of what works, that's fine. You're learning and you're improving. Do more of that. But you need feedback. You need some type of feedback, because if it's just you putting stuff out there or doing a presentation and thinking, did that work? Did I like that? Did I think? It's very difficult to judge yourself and analyze yourself that well. So you need feedback, and if you're acting on the feedback, you will improve. When are you going to be good enough that you need to do less of that? I think that probably takes at least a few months. And no one is going to go from being, not a particularly great communicator to a pretty good communicator in 2-3 weeks. It takes a little more than that.
Long run.
But I like with many things, communication is one of the essential skills you have in life, right? We are going to communicate until the day we're no longer here. So even if you are very good, it's still a skill you should be trying to improve on. The best communicators I know are the people who try to improve more. They've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, and they still read books about it. They still train themselves. They still ask for feedback. So I don't think communication is a skill that we can think of as, okay, I'm going to try really hard for 6 months and then I learned it. Then I don't have to learn about it anymore, right? Unless you stop communicating.
So I think in communication, we also learn the neuro-linguistic programs and how our brain works exactly. And if I'm giving a few examples for vulnerability, it's Brené Brown. I think you heard about her, the Brené Brown. So I listened to her that TEDx speaking that was in 2012. So that was a great sensation for me. And of course, the few leaders also use some narrations for their speaking so that we can connect with them. Like Obama, he always says, I have a dream for this, I have a dream for this. And we don't have any cultural difference. It's a United States of America. So I think those small aspects that we use in the long run or in the speeches, they usually trying to connect with our brain. So I think neuro-linguistic programs or like brain stuff's also there in storytelling.
Well, so what's in story is not neuro-linguistic, is not NLP, is not neuro-linguistic programming. I think you could probably argue that storytelling is the original NLP. Our brains have evolved to respond to stories more than they respond to other forms of communication. There is enough scientific evidence now to believe that we think in stories, we remember in stories, we dream in stories. So your brain is always going to look for a story for whatever information you receive. So this is an example I've used before, which is if I tell you I haven't called my mom in 10 years and I don't say anything else, your brain is now creating a story around that fact. So does he not like his mom? Does his mom not like him? Does he even have a mom anymore? Maybe he lost his mom and that's why he doesn't call her. The truth is none of those things. The real story is that I got married about 10 years ago and I outsourced calling my parents and calling family to my wife, who's a lot better at it, enjoys it more, and remembers to do it. So that's the real story. But if I don't tell you that, your brain is going to come up with a story of why that is happening. And when you are telling stories and you're telling good stories, you are giving the brain a story the brain can just absorb. So you're not going to keep trying to come up with your own story. I've given you the story. It's different than NLP. NLP works in different levels than storytelling does. But I think all of these things are attempts to communicate more effectively. So one of the simplest ways to communicate more effectively is, for example, understanding that when you ask people a question, the brain has to answer. I don't know if this is actually NLP, might be, but the famous, if I ask you, when was the last time that you went out on a date? Now, maybe you don't want to tell me, maybe it's embarrassing, maybe you haven't been on a date for a long time, but as soon as I ask the question, your brain has gone, it's been 6 months, right? So if you want people to think about certain things, it's a lot more effective to ask them about it than to tell them about it. Okay, so I think all of those things are valuable tools. Learning more storytelling, learning NLP, practicing public speaking. You can join a Toastmasters club.
Yes.
It's, now they're everywhere in the world. Because,
yes, in fact, I am also a TM only in Toastmasters after that, because
so that's another thing that people can do to practice their presentation skills and their leadership skills. So there's no shortage of ways you can practice things for free or for very little money, but it is important that you practice somehow.
Exactly. To be motivated every time, and to practice, I think persuasion and persistence is the most important key. So moving to our next question, where can inspiring individuals seek your support if someone wants to connect with you, if someone wants to ask you questions or anything, like the inspiring entrepreneurs are there. We have a whole bunch of networks and ecosystem. So how can we connect?
They can find me at my website, which is storypowers.com, but they can also find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the best way because I post there 3 or 4 times a week. So there's videos, there are clips from the podcast, there's texts, stuff. It's all about storytelling. I don't really post about anything else. And I tend to spend probably more time than I should on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to speak to me, find me there, connect with me or follow me or whatever, that would be the easiest way by far.
And of course, Early Birds Club is always there to help those people to connect with you, and you are being a member and mentor and coach in our ecosystem. So we are delighted to have you and have your informations and have your teachings over here. So of course, thank you so much for making and giving the time to us. It was really wonderful to get much more of information about storytelling, because we just know the communication, we just know the stories, how to make it, we know the self-branding, but we doesn't know the connections. We are lacking between the connections, lack the skills that we connect each other to mold it in a beautiful way. So I think you just given us the ways, you given us the path to go to the destination. Thank you so much, and welcome on board as a mentor and coach in the Early Birds Club. We will always be in touch. We will always be in connection. The Early Birds Club always work in a partnership and forms in a group of companies. So we have our media partner, News Sense. We have our communication outreach partner, Incredible India, Hamara India Incredible. We have our ecosystem partner, who is the initiation. We have an initiation in this O2-Drive also, Mystartupyatra. We have our project partner, Greenovators, and we have our life transformation program. We do a life transformation also for yoga and meditation and health, to keep the health in pace with the Sadhguru, Yoga Prachar. So once again, thank you so much for this time, and we, the Early Birds Club, always there for you, and of course we will always share and outreach your content. And thank you so much for everything.
Thanks again for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.